Contact 3, February 8, 1975 at 3:03 a.m.
You have brought your book to an end. It is a grandiose work. Also, if it is written somewhat hard, it corresponds however to the right tone, in order to make the sense understandable. You simply could not write it differently.
I believe that also. Yet I have, however, concerns that one will reject it.
Your concerns are baseless, because the men will listen up and your work will go into print.
Hopefully, I would be happy about that in any case. Presently I am interested, however, still in something different than my book.
So ask.
Since our last meeting I have intensively and excessively occupied myself with the so-called UFO literature. By that I am pushed on that yellow star men, if I may say that, always become described as extraterrestrially beautiful, and as protectors of the earth humanity, nearly as all-knowing, and as teachers and so on, and that through that you'll should practically live in spiritual and consciousness perfection. My intellect and my impression conveys to me in this hindsight, however, something completely different, and I don't come away about that all this can only be a lie. Lies, which supposedly have originated from sick brains, or stem from brains which aren't free, and rubber stamp pictures of fantasy as reality, while the person originally making the thoughts can't come to terms with the real reality, and therefore, they escape into a fantasy illusory world. The reality appears to be too hard for them, so they flee into fantasies, while they expect to get help from these. And when these men never want to carry the responsibility for each and everything, while they are perhaps too unknowing and too cowardly, so they simply shift this onto something else, which supposedly stand over them, and shall guide their fate. This something they then name God and religion. Simply a buffer and battering ram, in which one can hammer everything into a fantasy picture, on which one shifts all innate responsibility.
You make your very deep-going thoughts, and they correspond to the absolute truth. It is really so, like you say, the earthman is not skilled, even to carry and to recognize his responsibility, although he has to. So he shifts everything on something, which he sets over himself in his fantasy. Things, which he simply names religion or God, which should diminish the responsibility for him. If deceivers refer and ascribe to us, like you have said before, then that is nothing more than infamous lies, originating from the brains of men poor in consciousness, which imagine a better life in their fantasy, and while they themselves cannot achieve, at least still not in this life, so they ascribe it to us and make from us something perfect. Yet also we are still far removed from this level, and we must continually develop further. We are not the so-called overmen or supermen, like the earthmen choose to name us in their unknowledge and in their imaginations. We are also no teachers, missionaries or ones who prepare the way. We have only the assignment in the duty, which preserve developing human life in outer space and also to preserve already existing human life. That means that we try to hold order and watch over certain life. Here and there we approach the inhabitants of various worlds. If our directives allow that for us, we select individuals and release clarifications to them. This but only then, if a race becomes higher developed and slowly thinking. Slowly we prepare them then after that they must make themselves conversant with the thoughts, not to be the individual thinking essence in the universe. Here and there we also help them on a telepathic basis, to allow certain recognitions to sprout and to make time-essential technical inventions.
Why don't you then appear in the masses and show yourselves to the broad public? And why don't you set yourselves in connection with the most various governments?
Completely all Earth governments are occupied by men, which have an innate mind-searching and acquisitiveness. They would only want to take over our beamships under the cover of peace and of friendship, in order to be able to exercise the absolute Gavort domination over the Earth with them. Yet also they would try to conquer outer space, because they know no boundaries. They aren't once skilled, however, to create peace and friendship between the lands on the Earth, not once among the people in their own land. How should they then be skilled to have such might mediums in their hands, like our beamships and their manifold provisions represent? In order to show the broad mass of the public, for that no interest is at hand. Their consciousness is still too short and small and constricted in religious enslavement. On one side the Earthmen would venerate us in their short sense as gods like already at earlier times. And on the other side there would be many among them, which would take over our beamships such as criminals and might-greedy ones. There are however also those to not forget, and there are innumerable millions, which would succumb in full hysteria and would fall ill in consciousness. From these grounds it is advisable for the time being, only to maintain contact with individual Earthmen and through them slowly allow to know the knowledge about our existence and assignment and to prepare them for that which is coming. We are no guardians or protectors of the Earthmen. We just feel obligated to them, while our ancient fathers were their ancestors, before they fled from the Earth as a result of self-caused catastrophes of some might-greedy ones and relocated themselves of the Pleiadian stars. By the breadth of a hair exactly so, like you yourself had combined together and calculated that in the last decade according to all your knowledge. Only some few actualities have somewhat proceeded differently than you have assumed. In the great and whole, however, you have struck the core and the bulk of the history, and as the first man have found the truth regarding this.
So my calculations are thus right.
Certainly, yet about that I would elaborately report to you at a later point in time.
Also about Emmanuel.
Certainly, you should receive information about Atlantis and Mu, yet about Emmanuel you are already in the know. You know the writing of Judas Iscariot, which corresponds fully to the truth. So I must clarify nothing further to you about that.
Still it would interest me once, however, Simu's Manifold was written, that the star-men would become very old, millions of years even. What's it all about?
Do you believe these claims?
No, because it sounds improbable. I can only believe it if I see it in the form that a man of around 70 billion years old likewise is no longer a man, rather some spiritual embodiment.
With that you are also right. A human being may become several hundred or even thousands of years old, if he or she has reached a certain spiritual and consciousness relative condition of perfection and a correspondingly high and healthy way of life. Yet according to this stage of approximately 40 to 60 million years, the spirit no longer requires a pure material body, and it turns into a half-spirit body. It lives then only still as half-material for a further 60 to 80 billion years and in such high spheres, that one can no longer get in connection with it from the pure material humanly post perspective, except where there exists a very high level of evolution in terms of consciousness and spirit. After 60 to 80 billion years, the half-spirit form, i.e., the half-material form, then transforms itself into the first pure spirit form and goes into the level of Arahat Athasota.
Beautiful, yet may I still ask you a question or even two?
Just ask.
Surely you know that our dear little Earth women make a secret out of their age and smear themselves with powder and colored lips, face, fingernails and toenails. What do you make of it?
Certainly. They even lie to themselves through their doing. From my side I find makeup nauseating, so however also all forms of the painting of the body as well as the fingernails and toenails.
I also believe that. Yet how is that with Yol? Do Yol also live in this delusion?
Certainly not.
Good. Then may I also just ask, how old you actually are?
Certainly. Yet what do you guess?
I have no experience in the estimation of humans of your kind. Yet if I calculate according to my measuring sticks, then you would be somewhat 32 or 33 years old.
You understand your profession, because I would really be so old according to terrestrial concepts according to my appearance. However, you didn't know that with us the average life is very high and rests around 1,000 years. So am I thus still very young, and number first 330 years, which corresponds somewhat of your concept your 33 years.
What do you mean here, my concept? If you would have said your average age to me before, then I also would have estimated you differently. How could I know that then? Because I don't know anything again now.
It is already good. It was really my mistake. Yet I must go again now, and so live well then.